Sundance and garnered a lot of middle-aged men were leaving the cinema weeping. And for some reason, they put Fine Line, who were the producers, put it under wraps because they wanted to save it for the end of the year to release it. And during that time, I know that Steven Spielberg saw the film privately with the producer, and she's sitting there watching him, seeing how he's responding, and he said, "At last, great movie." So that phrase, sort of before social media, what we used to call word of mouth, that phrase got around, so it just generated some good buzz and went on an extraordinary trajectory. People seem to really connect, particularly with a musician who was impaired with a kind of aberrant personality, sorting out how to lead his own life, I suppose.
How actual is that film? There was music, there was family, there was cinema too, and the relation between the music and cinema.
For me, or
yeah,
in
or
Shine?
In Shine.
Yeah, I saw him play. I just finished doing a play, Uncle Vanya, by Chekhov in Sydney, and I went home to Melbourne in Australia, and I opened the weekend newspaper, which is a thing where you looked up what movies were on back in the olden days, and I saw that David Helfgott was performing at a little club. So I went along and watched him, and instantly I thought, he is going to be the most intriguing character because of his brilliance, but also because of his waywardness, you know.
How was the passage between theaters and cinema?
Well, I learned a lot. As soon as I'd finished that, I did another couple of films, and then I went into a long 12-part television series because I knew I had to learn a lot more about working with a camera. You know, it's pretty simple. The theater is like this without a microphone, and you learn to like that. But if you do that on a camera, it's grotesque. And you have to imagine with a camera here that the back row is here. So pull really quietly and they capture everything, and then they edit all the bits together. So it's a different craft.
Which one do you prefer?
I like both, but I think now I don't know if I have the same stamina I had 54 years ago doing theatre. I'm more interested in the intimacy of what a camera can do.
You have a strong relationship to Italy too. You worked with Giuseppe Tornatore, with La Miglior Offerta, The Best Offer. How was this experience, and how is your relation with Tornatore?
It was great. He came to Australia to the Melbourne Film Festival one year. He came to meet me initially, and I took him to all of the best Italian restaurants in Melbourne, of which there are many. And all of the waiters would go, "Oh my, Signor Tornatore." They loved him. And I knew that he was so highly respected, and I loved Cinema Paradiso. And I loved the deception of the screenplay about this very strange character, Virgil Oldman. And he had, we went I love Italy. Always loved Italian cinema. When I was the age of most of these students, yes, it was a golden age. You know, there was Fellini and Comencini and De Sica and Bertolucci and Pasolini. It was just huge. So when I was 20, I'm seeing all of these films, but I'm working in the theatre. And I hoped one day in my dreams that I would make an Italian film, but why would I think that? And Giuseppe wrote the story he said, I have images in mind. You live in a house and the door is here. I've only found what I want in Parma. So we'd go to Parma and film that scene. The house in the film had 17 different locations. So when I'm walking around the house talking on my phone, the first scene is shot in Vienna. The second scene is in a suburb in Rome. Then we go to Milano, and then we go to Trieste, because he has very specific visual, he's a very visual artist. I was hoping he was going to be here with Malena, but I don't think he can make it. He's busy.
He cannot make it.
You know, I saw him a few years back in Roma, and I watched, I think his most recent film was the beautiful documentary about Ennio Morricone.
Yeah, Ennio, yeah,
beautiful, beautiful, beautiful tribute from one artist to another. Yeah.
Do you remember the first time you went to a cinema?
Yeah, I was probably 5. I've got a funny feeling. It was certainly I went with my grandmother. She used to pick me up. My mother worked, so my grandmother would pick me up after school. And when I was 5, I think it was probably Guys and Dolls with Marlon Brando and Frank Sinatra, because
In italiano è Bulli e Pupe si chiama.
Yeah, because there were scenes backstage of people on old-fashioned telephones, you know, showgirls from the Kit Kat, from the hot box. Yeah, I think it was that. But Tom Thumb was also very a good special effects film for 1958.
And you always knew that you wanted to be an actor in your life?
Not really, no. I liked it. I was always enchanted by theatre as a child. And then in the 1960s, when I was at grade school, in grade 5, the Mercury space program invaded my imagination. And then the Gemini, and then the Apollo, and the moon landing. And so I thought I want to be an astronomer. And the education officers said, you need maths 1 and 2. Maths easy, maths very hard. Physics, chemistry. I have no skills whatsoever in any of those subjects. And I spent all that time through high school failing. But at the same time, I was always in the school drama club. And then when I went to university, I did arts degree and studied anthropology and literature and psychology and stuff. And joined a theatre company because we did a lot of theatre in the university. And then I worked a lot. I was in companies and I traveled all around Australia, and eventually a casting director had seen me when I was working in Adelaide in a repertory company, and that's how I met Scott Hicks. And I'd done a lot of Shakespearean clowns and idiots and drunkards and eccentric people. And they went, maybe you could play David Helfgott.
There's many young people here in this room. What do you suggest to them if they want to be an actor in the future?
Well, my story is not the only story, but it's never, don't anticipate. I know now everyone tries to set the goal and you aim for it. But from when I left, high school, my career path has been constantly shifting and changing until I decided that I wanted to work and focus on being an actor, which meant working, not reading books about acting, but getting jobs as an actor, getting experience. I was fortunate, a lot of luck is involved, and sometimes your skills develop, I suppose. I don't like it when people say, follow your dream. It's not a dream, it's it's work. And a film set particularly is a very industrial workspace. It's very hierarchical, it's like a military maneuver. And you have to have the kind of temperament that can fit into that, I think.
What does it mean to be an actor today?
I don't know. Remaining human, because I used to do my own makeup in the theatre. When I was 23, I was playing people as old as the judge in The Rule of Jenny Penn with yak hair and grease paint and whatever. And in cinema, Barbosa was partly, he was generally all real, but we watched Bill Nye playing Davy Jones. We'd all be on set in full wigs, hats, real boats, and he just had a few dots and a little test pattern of black and white graphics on his head, and grey silk pajamas. And I thought it must be very hard for him to imagine what he's going to really look like. Now that is 20 years ago. Now in volume studios you can have a whole panorama of an LED screen from anywhere in the world. I was talking to James Ashcroft about that, the director of Jenny Penn in New York, just recently, because he's now working with Michelle Monaghan and Robert De Niro in a film. He's really found his feet. And he said, I just think having a sense of reality and mood and atmosphere around you is kind of important to the creative process. But that will change. It depends on whether you want dimensions of humanity to be the study, the analysis you're making of why a story is being told, or whether you want it to be more like a video game and just whatever. I mean, I loved comic books as a child. I was madly in love with Superman comics back in the 1960s. I loved that Lex Luthor and Lana Lang and Lois Lane all were LL. Yeah. It was a magic set of alphabetical letters, and he was an extraordinary character, but he was just in print, and it was still very exciting. Sometimes that can be just how you do it, So it's good seeing Henry Cavill on stage last night.
Last night, for the Man of Steel, because the premiere of Man of Steel was a year, 20 years ago. Yeah.
Right.
Do you like the superhero movies? Do you like the superhero movies?
Yeah, I'm not as... It was something that was more exciting when I was 10, less so now that I'm 73. I look for slightly bigger, deeper, more nuanced, richer, more challenging stories, perhaps. But I also love it when, you know, I loved in the very first Superman film with Christopher Reeves, when he flew around the world to make time go backwards. That to me was very magical, and he was doing it because he loved Lois.
Very romantic.
Yeah.
Can you share with us some memories about Pirates of Caribbean?
Yes. I had a beautiful relationship with all of the monkeys. There were several monkeys over 20 years, really. There was Chiquita and Pablo and Tara. Tara was a nightmare. No, I got asked once in an interview who was the worst co-star you've ever had. And I said, well, there was a female performer in the first Pirates, and everyone thought I was talking about Keira Knightley, and I wasn't talking about Keira Knightley. I was talking about Tara because the capuchin monkeys were trained to have no relationship with me whatsoever, which is wrong in normal acting terms, because the trainers said, no, Tara will do everything through the trainer, and they will make it look as though Tara is doing everything with me. So there'd be, I would say, a line of dialogue, and they'd go, they had a little clicker and a peanut. Click, click, click. And Tara would look at me and I'd go, oh yeah, that. So we were acting together. Tara also had to wear kind of special underwear because capuchin monkeys are very nervous and they shit themselves and pee themselves all the time. There are not many other actresses I've worked with that go through that kind of experience when they're with me. But then we found out that Pablo, who was supposed to be the swimming Jack the monkey, Pablo was good. He was like a stunt monkey. He could swim through the ocean. And then when we got to that scene, Pablo had a panic attack and he couldn't swim. And he was sent back to his trailer. And Tara was actually a great swimmer. So she was a diva, you know what I mean? She was a triple threat who could do everything. Okay, 2015, for the 5th Pirates film, they shot in Australia on the Gold Coast, my old childhood beach. Very short visit for me, 2 hours on the plane, not 36 to go to the Caribbean. And Pablo was there after, I hadn't seen Pablo since 2011. And I said to Mark, the trainer, will Pablo remember me? Because we were just kept distant from, they were trying to encourage social media gossip stories, I think. And he said, oh yeah, Pablo will remember. He could remember the smell of your earwax. From him. Right? And I looked at him and he went, like, Jeffrey, where have you been? He'd never done that before in his life. So it was like a great reunion. And the nice thing, at the end of that film, he gave me a gift, a painting that he'd done about this big. It was like an homage to 1950s abstract impressionism. It had colors and splashes and dynamics. And the best thing was on the border, fingerprints. He'd signed it. It's an original Pablo.
And now, where is Pablo?
I'm going to put it out on eBay because I think it could be millions. Yeah.
And what about the action scenes in Pirates of Caribbean? How did you prepare to shoot that?
The stunt team were extraordinary. The first 3 films, we were always shooting at sea, out in the ocean, in big boats, real, which was fantastic. The last film was completely CGI with a boat on a mechanical thing, which works, but it was we felt much more dangerous and much more like pirates when you were actually on a real boat. I loved the opportunity, like playing the piano in Shine, I loved the opportunity to learn sword fighting. And I would do it for 6 weeks, 3 months before we were filming. I'm not talking out of school, but Johnny, he would just come in and go click, click, and that's it. Next one, click, click, like that. And he's very good at that, and he had a lot of other things on his plate. But I loved learning the whole fight. But in the wide shots, the stunt double always had to do it, because when you have 50 pirates in a small space on the boat, doing the, standing in for Kira and Johnny and me and, Orlando, it's too dangerous, But I loved the speed of getting up to speed. And the stunt guys were fantastic because they could stop instantly if anything went wrong, you know what I mean? So I like learning a craft. I did a film once about a tailor in Panama, and John Borman, the director, wanted me to cut a suit on screen in continuous action. So I learned from Ernesto in Panama City, who was a tailor, not the tailor of Panama. And he had a bit of wood and a piece of chalk. Like that. And it was great. And the eye, So it was just, the suit was unwearable. I mean, if anyone put the suit on, it was terrible. But it looked good.
Yeah. The power of cinema.
It is.
Se qualcuno ha qualche domanda, alzate la mano. Ne abbiamo una lì, lei l'ha alzata per prima. Vai. Riusciamo a portarne un microfono solo?
Who's the actor here? Who's the actor or actress you've had the most chemistry with while working in cinema or in theater?
There were many people. I haven't really worked with anyone temperamental. Some, not many, but the ones I really admired. I loved. This was way back when I did Quills. Kate Winslet was a fantastic person to work with. She was 24. She was just brilliant, naturally brilliant at being that character in that film. Charlize Theron in the Peter Sellers film came in for 2 weeks, and I had a really great rapport. I suppose most projects I've done, I've liked it when there's been time for rehearsal and some discussion, like the theatre, not just go straight in and shoot without preparation. Because it's a very exciting job to have, particularly when you're shooting out of sequence. There's a lot of jigsaw. I've worked with Emily Watson quite a number of times now, and that's kind of good. We happened to do 2 films that were set in Nazi Germany, and one day we were on set playing husband and wife, Einstein and his wife. there's a knock at the door from a Nazi officer, and I said, hey, wait a minute. In The Book Thief, we did another scene where a Nazi officer knocked on the front door. You go this side, and I'll go this side, so we can make it a bit different.
What do you attract most of a story? What do you love about a story when you read it?
At this stage, things that are seemingly way out of my capabilities, but mostly because as I said, I played a lot of people in their 70s when I was in my 20s. The chance to do that on screen now is no makeup.
Abbiamo una domanda lì, se possiamo portare il microfono, poi ne abbiamo un'altra lì, sì.
Good morning. Who are the actors or directors who have inspired you the most in your career?
I loved Gore Verbinski, who did the first trilogy of the Pirates. He was, I'd seen Mouse Hunt, which I think might have been his first film, I'm not sure. But very smart in the genre of crazy Laurel and Hardy kind of comedy. He and Dariusz Wolski, the cinematographer, on the weekends in the Caribbean, they would be watching films by Henri Clouzot, the early 50s French filmmaker, studying the lighting, and they were great students of brave, imaginative thinking in terms of design and art direction and everything, and looking back to the masters that they admired the most. I loved working just recently with James Ashcroft because he just had a natural evolving gift that took him from the theatre into cinema, and you realize this is where he really should be. Mm-hmm. And he does have a predilection for horror films, for genre films. Mm-hmm. So he knows how to make them not cliched or boring. Yeah. He's going, we have to advance the form, you know. I'm trying to think, well, Scott Hicks was great because he guided me through Shine and took that film on a very big journey. But I've been lucky. I mean, you know, John Borman, The Tailor of Panama, I'd seen him do Deliverance and Point Blank, great classic films from the 60s and 70s. And Tornatore was really carrying that Italian heritage. Yeah. I remember when Shine played at the Capri Festival. Mm-hmm. I met a lot of Italian actors, and this was in the mid-90s. And this was pre-Matteo Garrone and Sorrentino, you know what I mean? And I met some actors from Naples, and they said, we are doing Neighbours, which is a television series. Mm-hmm. And there was a slump and now it's back again, you know, major way. You know, Mio Capitano, who is one of the great films of the last few years, I thought, very much, very much.
Abbiamo una domanda là.
Grazie, ho appena visto il bellissimo film The Run of Jenny Pin. Le faccio i miei complimenti, che lei sia un attore superlativo lo sappiamo, però come viene appena detto, le piace confrontarsi con personaggi difficili, sempre nuovi, e questo è un personaggio veramente particolare. Però la mia domanda non è questa, la mia domanda è legata a due cose che ho sentito, cioè questo è un tempo in cui i pazzi comandano sui ciechi. Uno. La seconda domanda è quando non c'è il leone comandano le iene. Ecco, questo è quindi il segno che questo film, attraverso questa storia di violenza e sopraffazione, parla alle violenze del nostro tempo.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, yeah. Grazie for your comments. Thank you very much. Yes, I do gravitate towards characters that hopefully are very nuanced and very complicated in layers to what the story encourages them to be involved with. I suppose because I worked in the theatre for a very long time with playwrights like Shakespeare, the characters are enormous, you know, and Greek plays, in that the Teatro Antico, those plays would be about, they were like operas. They were huge emotional plays about the destruction of the house, La Casa, of Atreus, you know what I mean? And families, but terrible fate and things that seemed only the gods could solve, you know. So I like characters in The Rule of Jenny Penn, that the judge is somebody who's very rigid in his ethical thinking and legal thinking and tough. But then he meets an adversary who's a psychopath, and he knows it's best for the world of that film. The psychopath has to go, you know, has to be vanquished. So yes, I am attracted to that kind of thing. Barbosa to me, you know, when I first had the costume fitting, Penny Rose, who designed all of those films, once we tried on the big hat with the feather, I always thought, that is the brain of the character. It's a big brain. He thinks he's very important. He's also very vain. And then when the hat came off, we went, Barbosa completely disappeared. There's only one scene, I think, when Tia Dalma falls into a million crabs, my hat falls off, and it's back on my head so fast, because that is his entire identity. I can't remember the last part of the question.
The second part was about violence nowadays.
Oh, yeah. Yes. The first film that James Ashcroft made, and I recommend it, is on Netflix, I think, called Coming Home in the Dark. It's a very disturbing film about random violence that actually goes back into deep-seated history where consequences of prior violence have never been addressed within an educational circumstance. And people are disturbed by it, but there's a kind of, a bit like the Greek idea of drama, there's a purification of going, if you don't deal with it, it will just keep perpetuating. And I think in Jenny Penn, that is true to a degree. I don't know, it's a film open to a lot of interpretations as to what is right or wrong, but certainly action needed to be taken for the greater good.
Abbiamo una domanda lì?
Hi. First of all, nice to meet you. I wanted to ask you, what do you feel has changed in your way of acting, in your acting skill, in your method, and how does it help you, if so?
From the beginning to the end, how long have we got? No. The last one, well, it was, the challenge was that I didn't have to learn any moves because I was stuck in a wheelchair. And I wanted to see how much of the personality could come out. So on the wheelchair, there were 5 gears, 5 speeds. So the language between me, the camera operator, DP, Matt, and James, the director, is this a one scene? Or is this a 5 scene down a very narrow corridor with a sharp turn right, where it becomes like the French Connection towards the end of the film for wheelchairs? And when I was practicing, on the second last day of the filming, the editors always celebrate by making a goof reel of all the accidents. There are a tremendous number of shots of me running into a doorway, hitting a person, almost not having James Ashcroft climbing up on the cameraman to get out of the way because I'd lost control of the vehicle. So I don't know if I've improved that much, because each film presents its own requirements, you know.
Thank you very much. Abbiamo ancora tempo per una domanda lì, poi dopo dobbiamo chiudere.
Hi.
Hello.
Was there a particular scene of the book Diff that had an emotional impact on you, and why? Thank you.
I love working on that film. I loved the novel is written by an Australian author, and that appealed to me because it was about his ancestry of his mum and dad living in the south of Germany, and then he kind of turned it into his own story. Out of the blue, I was filming in New York last week on a new project, and Sophie Nellis just texted me from nothing. I'd written to her, I'd seen a photo of her with Melanie Linsky in a Vogue magazine, and I wrote to her and said, "This pic looks great, so pleased, you are such a great actress. You were when you were 12. She's now 25, and I've seen her in Yellow Jackets, the first season." And she wrote back and said, "You crazy, old, method actor, granddad." No, because that's what I was. I admired her so much because she had innate abilities to play some of the emotional scale of what's the character? Liesl? No, that sounded music. No. Liesl Memminger. She had such an emotional range in that film of dealing with grief and death and loss of parents and everything. And I thought even in Yellow Jackets, she was the one character that had to do some of the real heavy lifting for truthful, credible, and very emotional kind of performances. So she was great to work with and very playful because she and the guy playing Rudy, I forget his name, anyway, they were sitting in a makeup van and they were always making short, this is pre-TikTok, they were always making short films on their iPad in the makeup chair, going, hey Jeffrey, look at this, it's so cool. Boom, 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 boom. And I go, yeah, that's too, my brain doesn't understand what you're doing, you know. So she was a good person to know from that generation.
What do you think about cinema nowadays? We are living a period full of challenges.
Well, yes, there was the coincidence of COVID and streaming happened at the same time. So streaming 1, COVID 0. No, I don't know. It has shifted. That's why I like this festival and I like that theatre, that people can see that's how theatres used to be. The whole community in a big group. You know, from my anthropological studies, the Homo sapiens species was developed or evolved to meet and self-coordinate themselves as a survival group, which they did. At the moment, that structure of meeting as a group, we don't do it as much. We do it by ourselves, or we do it inside our earbuds or headphones, or with our hat down, and like that, inside ourselves. And we didn't evolve for that, and I think it gives people problems relating to what we are, which is a social group of advanced animal, you know. So.
Thank you very much. Signore e signori, Geoffrey Rush.
Thank you, grazie a tutti.